So essentially, this whole template is based off. I know you've probably seen it before, but in Mladen's strength training manual, he's got this comparison chart. And so what I've done is a couple of things based off that. First one, there's a lot of red, so you can kind of ignore the red. I'll go through this bit first. So what I've worked out here is if they know one of their 1 rep maxes in any of those movements, they can select it and type it in, and then they can calculate their estimated 1 rep max from that lift. And that just works through all of these percentages. And then what I've done here in this first example, that's the estimated 1 rep max of what my dumbbell overhead press would be from a bench press of 120 plus or minus 5%. So you can get a range. So you could say to someone you want to start between 22 and 25. Or what I've done is this here is a dumbbell overhead press, but I have done it off an average. Say we know they've got a bench press of 120. Okay, I've then worked out what the 1 rep max for all of their lifts would be off that, and then what their 1 rep max of all of those lifts would be for the dumbbell shoulder press. So it's not purely working off the 1 rep max set by just the bench press. I know that puts a bit bigger range in it, but what that allows us to do is actually have an average and a standard deviation. So the average 1 rep max calculated versus all the lifts versus what you actually have variation in those results. So just 2 different ways. I think it doesn't really matter which one you use, but it gives you a range. And then what I've done is put that next to the Prilepins chart and the volume guides in the RIR. So 100% would be 22.5 to 21.5 if we use this standard deviation. So then from this chart, I've set out a couple of programs that can work in different ways. So in this one, you've got your exercise. I'm going to put it back to just incline because it just is cleaner. The coach could prescribe the exercise, then prescribe the intensity that you want them to work at, and that will then only give you reps that fit within that percentage and to those sets in order to achieve these guidelines. So that would be, if I've said 79%, I know I can select any of those reps because, I know this gets a bit confusing, 79 in this chart here, that is all my reps that are available. And then I've got the what is a low, high, or medium reps for total volume. So that means I can adjust my sets. So say I want to do 8 reps in each set, I can only choose 2 or 3 sets. Say I want to do 2 reps, I can now choose up to 10 sets. And what that also does is calculate what the expected reps in reserve would be. So I'm using intensity, reps, and sets to estimate what I think their reps in reserve would be, and it also calculates what I've programmed as moderate reps, or if I do here 6 sets, it's telling me I've got quite low reps, and that's in relation to these guidelines. I've then done another one where you select as a coach the intensity, the reps in reserve, and then that tells me how many sets that I can do. So I've picked 85% or 86%, and I want them to have no reps in reserve. So that means I could have 2 sets of 5, 3 sets of 5, or 4 sets of 5, and you can actually see that there. So 2 sets of 5 at 86%, no reps in reserve is low reps. 3 sets, optimal reps. 4 sets, high reps. Now, as soon as I go 1 rep in reserve, you can see that slightly changes how many reps I want them to perform. So if I'm saying none, then it's 5. If I'm saying 1 rep in reserve, it automatically changes to 4. So that one you're just changing intensity, reps in reserve, and sets. Now the last one I designed, which I personally think is the best, where as a coach you manipulate the reps in reserve, the reps you want them to do in the set, and then that tells me what weight and what percentage I want them to work at. And it gives them the range still, because we're still working off that standard deviation from the estimated 1 rep max. So it gives you a range, meaning you don't have to say this is the exact number you have to do. So again, incline bench, but I want them to have 3 reps in reserve. That means I could have any of these reps, literally any of them. So if I go 17, I can only do 1 or 2 sets. So 1 set of 17 with 3 reps in reserve, I need to be at 60%. Or I can say, actually, I only want them to do 3 reps with 3 reps in reserve. So actually, I could have got to 7 sets there, and I'm working at 77 kilos. So that reps in reserve there just adjusts that weight. And that is all based off Prilepin's guidelines, the volume guidelines, and the estimated 1 rep max. So then I've actually put an example programming sheet in here where this is off the first one. So this one where you're selecting intensity, reps, and sets. First of all, you select the exercise, select the intensity that you want them to work at, how many sets, how many reps. It will tell you the weight, it will tell you the reps in reserve, and it will tell you as a coach whether you've done moderate or high reps. So essentially what we could end up here is a program where, as a coach, all we have to do is we put the exercise, the reps in reserve, the reps, and the sets, and it's going to pump out all the weights that they want to use. But also from a programming point of view, we can look at the total reps and whether that's low or high in comparison to Prilepin's chart. And then again, because Mladen has got quite a few of these lift comparison charts, I've only done it with the upper body one here, but we could have one that looks at all the uppers versus bench, or the lowers versus back squat, or he has got the one that combines uppers and lowers. So essentially, if you just have all of these as your main available lifts, like you could have a template where the athlete can, or the coach can set the exercises, and it's going to pump out all the available reps and sets that we know fit within those guidelines, and that we also know are suitable are reps in reserve, but we also know are moderate, high, low reps. So from a coaching point of view, we can actually have a better understanding of what kind of volume we're putting them through, and it being in a better guideline, if that makes sense. I know there's a lot going on there, but essentially the thing to look at is this bottom one, exercise, reps in reserve, select the reps, select the sets. And again, we've got that range all working from Prilepin stuff here, the reps in reserve from Mladen and the volume guidelines, and again, all of those lift comparisons. So